Have you ever opened your refrigerator, looked at the neatly arranged, chilled food, and felt reassured believing everything inside is fresh, safe, and protected? If so, you're certainly not alone. Throughout my 20-plus years in the field of nutrition and food safety research, I've met countless individuals from retired seniors to young homemakers who sincerely believe that the fridge is a safe zone for almost every food. But here's the surprising truth: that belief can sometimes do more harm than good. Some everyday foods, though seemingly harmless, actually lose nutritional value, undergo microbial changes, and in some cases even develop mild toxins when stored in cold conditions. Modern science is beginning to unravel food myths that we've long accepted as fact. One case I often recall is from a woman named Linda, age 62. She struggled with chronic bloating for years, with no clear diagnosis. Only after learning that she stored raw tomatoes in the fridge and often consumed them cold in her salads did we identify the issue. Cold temperatures had disrupted key digestive enzymes and degraded the tomato's natural lycopene, an essential antioxidant for older adults. Just 2 weeks after changing this one habit, Linda's symptoms improved dramatically. Linda's case isn't unique. What we eat and how we store what we eat impacts more than digestion. It directly affects our energy, mood, and even sleep quality. When nutrients are depleted, the body doesn't just weaken physically, it suffers mentally, too. Fatigue, irritability, brain fog. That's why in today's video we'll explore a lesser-known topic: 10 common foods you should avoid storing in the refrigerator, not because they're dangerous by nature but because improper storage can rob them of their flavor, nutrition, and your long-term health, especially if you're over 50 or managing digestive issues, inflammation, or fatigue. But don't worry, this isn't just a what not to do list. Together we'll dive into the why behind each food, the science of how cold affects it, and simple natural storage alternatives you can use right at home. Now let's move forward. You might be surprised by a few familiar names, and if you're looking for small science-backed habits that can make a big difference in your long-term vitality, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like this video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep building a healthier life starting right in your kitchen. Now that we've begun to question what truly belongs in our refrigerator, let's take a closer look at one food that's often misunderstood: the humble potato. It's a comfort food for many of us, deeply woven into family dinners, cozy soups, and nostalgic Sunday roasts. But beyond its warm familiarity lies a hidden mistake I see far too often: storing potatoes in the fridge. At first glance, it sounds reasonable. Cold equals preservation, right? Not quite, at least not for root vegetables. Like potatoes, the cold temperature inside a refrigerator rapidly converts the starch in potatoes into simple sugars. That shift might not seem alarming, but for your body and your meal it can be. This conversion alters the taste, turning the potato's earthy, savory profile into an oddly sweet, gritty texture. But the bigger concern isn't just about flavor, it's what happens when these sugar-loaded potatoes are cooked at high temperatures. Through a chemical reaction known as the Maillard reaction, these sugars interact with amino acids to form acrylamide, a compound that research from the European Food Safety Authority (EFSA) has associated with potential carcinogenic effects in animal models. While more human data is still being gathered, long-term, high exposure to acrylamide is not something we want casually building up in our meals, especially not for older adults who already face greater oxidative stress and slower detoxification. Recall a retired chef named Thomas, age 68, who came to me feeling unusually sluggish after meals and had recently experienced a mild spike in inflammatory markers. His diet was clean overall, but one detail stood out: he stored all his potatoes in the refrigerator and regularly roasted them. Once we adjusted how he stored and prepared them, his energy improved, and his CRP, C-reactive protein levels, began to decline. Sometimes small shifts make a big difference. The issue isn't just nutritional, it's about how these choices affect both our physical and mental well-being. When acrylamide builds up and digestion is compromised, we may feel fatigue, brain fog, and mood instability, all from something as seemingly simple as how we store our vegetables. So what can we do differently? It's simpler than most think. Potatoes thrive in a cool, dark, well-ventilated place, not cold. A pantry or cupboard away from direct heat or sunlight is ideal. Avoid plastic bags, which trap moisture and accelerate spoilage. Instead, use breathable materials like mesh bags, paper sacks, or baskets to allow air circulation. And here's a lesser-known tip: keep them far from onions. Onions release ethylene gas, which speeds up sprouting and decay in nearby potatoes, an interaction that happens silently but quickly. Now let's move forward. These changes may sound minor, but over time, they help preserve not just your food but your health. And for those of us in our 50s, 60s, or beyond, every choice we make in the kitchen has ripple effects throughout the body, from joint comfort and digestion to memory and mood. When we store food wisely, we nourish with intention, ready to uncover the next surprising item that doesn't belong in the fridge. Stay with me, what comes next may be sitting in your crisper drawer right now. After addressing potatoes, let's move to another misunderstood kitchen staple that many unknowingly mishandle. The tomato. Tomatoes are more than just a colorful addition to your salad or sandwich. They carry a delicate balance of natural sugars, acids, and powerful phytonutrients that are incredibly sensitive to temperature. As a longtime health researcher and nutrition educator, I've seen how something as simple as where you store a tomato can make a noticeable difference in both its taste and its health benefits. Let me explain. One of the most common habits I see is people storing tomatoes in the refrigerator, believing the cold will prolong their freshness. It feels like a safe move, but in reality, that cold environment interrupts the tomato's natural ripening process, halting its flavor development and altering its cellular structure. The result? A bland, mealy, lifeless fruit that bears little resemblance to the vibrant, juicy tomato it was meant to be. But the story doesn't stop at taste. Research from the University of Florida has shown that chilling tomatoes below 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 10 degrees Celsius for even just a few days disrupts the expression of genes responsible for producing volatile compounds, the very chemicals that give tomatoes their rich aroma and flavor. Once this process is disturbed, it doesn't bounce back, even if you return the tomato to room temperature. In short, the damage is permanent. Worse still, chilling also compromises levels of lycopene, a powerful antioxidant linked to reduced risk of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers, especially prostate cancer. Lycopene gives tomatoes their deep red hue, but more importantly, it supports cellular repair and fights oxidative stress. For older adults whose bodies are already more vulnerable to inflammation and metabolic decline, this loss is not trivial. One of my patients, Margaret, age 71, was struggling with mild hypertension and joint stiffness. Her diet was largely plant, yet her antioxidant blood profile came back low. After a deeper look, we realized she consumed tomatoes daily but always stored them in the fridge and ate them raw, straight from the cold. Once she switched to ripening them at room temperature and using them in lightly cooked dishes like tomato soup or roasted sauce, her inflammation markers began to drop and she reported feeling more energetic, less foggy in the morning. What we store and how we store it echoes far beyond the kitchen. It influences digestion, immune modulation, hormonal health, and yes, even mood. Cold, under-ripened tomatoes can actually be harder on your gut and less satisfying to the brain's reward system, which subconsciously registers flavor and texture as a signal of nourishment. So, how can we make a smarter choice here? The best way to store tomatoes is at room temperature, away from direct sunlight. Let them sit stem side down in a bowl or on a counter, ideally in a single layer to prevent bruising. This helps retain their moisture and encourages natural ripening. If your tomatoes are underripe, give them a few days to develop their full flavor. Only once they're fully ripe and you truly can't eat them right away should you consider refrigeration, and even then, take them out and allow them to come back to room temperature before eating. Now let's move forward, because while tomatoes are one of the worst fruits to refrigerate, they're not the only ones. In fact, what we'll explore next may be sitting right next to your tomatoes in the fridge drawer, quietly losing flavor and nutrients each day. Stick with me. Every small shift we make in our food storage not only enhances taste but supports energy, mood, and resilience. And at this stage in life, these seemingly small improvements can add up to big, lasting change. Now that we've peeled back the truth about tomatoes, let's continue into another misunderstood kitchen staple: onions. While often seen as just a background flavor, onions are in fact one of the most potent health-supporting ingredients in our entire pantry, but only when they're stored and handled correctly. As someone who spent over 2 decades studying both the culinary and biochemical properties of food, I can say with certainty how we store onions matters more than most people realize. Refrigeration, for instance, though well-intentioned, is one of the most common mistakes I see. Onions don't respond well to cold, damp environments. When placed in the refrigerator, the chill and humidity accelerate the breakdown of their natural sugars, causing them to soften prematurely and even become slimy or sticky to the touch. The firm, clean snap of a fresh onion gets replaced by a mushy, dull, often pungent mass, and what's worse, this texture change often comes with an unpleasant shift in flavor. Onions may turn overly sweet or acquire a sharp, musty bite that wasn't there before. But there's another layer to this: odor contamination. Onions release volatile sulfur compounds, especially when cut or bruised. When stored improperly in the fridge, these compounds permeate nearby foods, especially fats like butter, dairy, and even fruits. This not only ruins your other ingredients but also sets off a chain of gut-related responses in sensitive individuals. From bloating to mild nausea. Let me share a real case. Edward, a 67-year-old retired carpenter, came to me after noticing digestive discomfort every time he made his favorite omelette. He was using healthy ingredients: eggs, spinach, onions, but unknowingly storing his onions in the fridge, unwrapped, alongside his berries and almond milk. The result: cross-contamination of sulfur compounds altered the flavor of multiple foods and triggered mild IBS-like symptoms. Once he switched to storing onions in a ventilated pantry and kept cut onions sealed separately. His symptoms resolved and his breakfast tasted better. 2. This is a clear reminder that food affects not only our bodies but our emotional relationship with meals. When ingredients lose their intended texture and flavor, meals become less satisfying. That disconnect, though subtle, can impact appetite regulation, nutrient absorption, and even emotional wellness over time. So, how do we store onions the right way? Keep them in a cool, dry, and well-ventilated space like a pantry shelf or mesh basket. Avoid plastic bags, which trap moisture and accelerate spoilage. Instead, use paper bags or breathable containers. Also, and this is crucial, store onions away from potatoes. While they're often bought together, potatoes emit moisture and ethylene gas, both of which cause onions to sprout or spoil faster. And what if you've already sliced an onion? That's the one exception. Refrigeration is okay, but only when handled properly. Wrap the cut onion tightly in plastic wrap or place it in an airtight glass container to prevent odor transfer. Use it within 1 to 2 days for best results. Now let's move forward, because while onions are often overlooked, their role in health and flavor is profound. Next, we'll explore another common kitchen item that seems harmless in the fridge, but may be quietly degrading your food's quality and your health every single day. Every small storage habit you improve brings your meals closer to their natural flavor and your body closer to its best. Let's keep going. Your kitchen. This is becoming a smarter, healthier space with every step. Following our deep dive into onions, let's now turn to a small but mighty ingredient that carries centuries of culinary and medicinal value. Garlic. Garlic isn't just a seasoning, it's a symbol. Found in kitchens from Italy to Vietnam, it lends warmth, complexity, and aroma to everything from roasted meats to stews to healing broths. Yet, for all its cultural reverence, garlic remains surprisingly vulnerable to modern storage mistakes, and one of the biggest, storing it in the refrigerator. Over the years in my clinical work and research, I've seen how this one simple misstep, often done with good intentions, can quietly erode garlic's nutritional and sensory power. When garlic is exposed to cold and humidity, 2 things start happening quickly. It begins to sprout, and it begins to rot. That green shoot you sometimes see in the center of a clove. It's a signal of chemical change. Sprouted garlic takes on a bitter, unpleasant taste and a fibrous texture that's difficult to blend or cook evenly. Simultaneously, moisture in the fridge softens the cloves and accelerates microbial growth, opening the door to mold, decay, and flavor loss. Worse still, garlic is highly porous. It absorbs surrounding odors in the fridge, meaning your once spun clove might return to the pan smelling faintly of last night's leftovers or nearby dairy. The result: dull garlic, off notes in your dishes, and compromised digestion, especially for older adults or those with sensitive gut linings. One of my patients, Rebecca, age 64, came to me with chronic bloating and mild nausea that spiked after meals. She was eating home-cooked food, avoiding heavy oils, and even incorporating garlic into her meals as a natural antimicrobial. But she kept her garlic in the fridge, unpeeled, in a plastic bag. The constant exposure to condensation had triggered mold growth, barely visible to the eye but enough to disturb her microbiome. After switching to a dry, ventilated clay pot and only refrigerating peeled cloves in sealed containers, her symptoms began to improve in under 2 weeks. Garlic isn't just a flavor booster. It's biologically active, rich in allicin, a compound known to support heart health, immune defense, and even anti-inflammatory pathways. But these benefits are fragile, easily diminished by the wrong storage method. And when garlic spoils, its therapeutic properties decline sharply. So what's the best way to keep garlic potent, flavorful, and safe? Store whole bulbs at room temperature, in a dry, dark, well-ventilated space. Clay pots, mesh baskets, or paper bags all work beautifully. Keep garlic away from direct sunlight and excess moisture. If you've peeled or chopped the cloves, you may refrigerate them, but only when wrapped tightly or placed in a small glass jar to prevent odor transfer. And if you choose to infuse garlic in oil, a popular practice, be sure to store it refrigerated and use it within 1 week to prevent the risk of botulism, a serious but avoidable foodborne illness. Now let's move forward. As we've seen with potatoes, tomatoes, onions, and now garlic, what we assume keeps food safe may quietly degrade its power and even harm our health. These tiny changes in texture, flavor, and bioavailability matter. They impact how we digest, how we feel after eating, and how well our bodies absorb nutrients, especially as we age. The more we align our storage habits with nature's design, the more vitality we preserve, not just in our food, but in ourselves. Stick with me for what's next, because another beloved item often stored in the fridge might be doing more harm than good, and chances are, it's sitting on your shelf right now. Having just explored the do's and don'ts of garlic storage, let's now turn our attention to a fruit that's become a modern-day icon of healthy eating: the avocado. Beloved for its buttery texture and heart-healthy fats, avocado is more than just a topping for toast. It's a nutritional powerhouse, rich in monounsaturated fatty acids, potassium, fiber, and compounds like lutein that support eye and brain health. But as I've seen time and time again in my work, even the most health-conscious people unknowingly compromise these benefits by storing avocados the wrong way. The most common mistake: refrigerating avocados before they're ripe. It seems like a harmless effort to make them last, but the science tells a different story. When an unripe avocado is chilled, its natural ripening process driven by enzymes and the release of ethylene gas comes to a halt. The flesh remains hard, flavorless, and in many cases, never fully develops. Some even darken or become rubbery inside, leading to disappointment when you slice it open expecting creamy perfection. I once worked with a client named Daniel, a 59-year-old plant-based chef who was frustrated by his inconsistent avocado textures. He had been keeping all his avocados in the fridge immediately after shopping to preserve freshness, but in reality, he was interrupting their chemical maturation. After changing his routine, allowing them to ripen naturally at room temperature, before refrigerating only fully ripe ones, he found not just better flavor, but also noticed less digestive bloating, thanks to improved fiber integrity and nutrient availability. Beyond texture and taste, the way we store avocados affects their nutritional potency. Research from the University of California has shown that cold storage of unripe avocados can reduce their ability to synthesize key antioxidants, like glutathione, a vital compound for liver detoxification and immune support. For older adults, this reduction can be significant, as our endogenous antioxidant systems naturally decline with age. And let's not overlook the emotional impact of this simple fruit. Avocados, when ripe and creamy, increase satiety and positively influence neurotransmitter production thanks to their high levels of vitamin B6 and healthy fats. When you eat a vibrant, smooth avocado, your body feels more nourished, your mood often improves, and your meals become more satisfying emotionally and biologically. So what's the right way to store them? Keep unripe avocados at room temperature, ideally on the kitchen counter, away from direct sunlight. If you want to speed up ripening, place them in a brown paper bag with a banana or apple fruits that emit ethylene gas, which promotes faster softening. Once the avocado yields gently to pressure but is not mushy, you can then refrigerate it for 1 to 2 days to pause further ripening. If you've already cut into the avocado, brush the exposed surface with lemon or lime juice, wrap it tightly in plastic wrap or place it in an airtight glass container and store it in the fridge. The citric acid helps delay oxidation, preserving that vibrant green color and fresh taste. Now let's move forward, because while avocados are often treated with care, our next ingredient might surprise you. It's a common pantry item that many people freeze or chill out of habit, unknowingly destroying both its flavor and shelf life. Your kitchen, as we're uncovering step by step, is more than a storage space. It's an extension of your long-term health strategy. Every fruit, every choice stored right brings us closer to vitality, one meal at a time. After understanding how refrigeration can undermine the ripening of avocados, let's turn to a fruit many of us grew up eating daily: bananas. They're one of the most accessible and beloved fruits across the globe. Their natural sweetness, easy to digest fiber, and portability make bananas an ideal snack for children, athletes, and seniors alike. But despite their popularity, I've noticed a consistent pattern among my patients and clients. Many still refrigerate bananas prematurely, believing that cold storage will extend their shelf life. Unfortunately, that well-intentioned habit can do more harm than good. Bananas are tropical fruits, and they don't respond well to cold environments. When placed in a refrigerator before fully ripening, bananas experience what's called chilling injury. The peel darkens, quickly turning mottled brown or black, while the interior remains starchy, underdeveloped, and slightly bitter. The fruit may look overripe on the outside but feel chalky or rubbery inside. This confuses many people into discarding perfectly edible fruit, or worse, consuming it before it's truly ready, missing out on both tastes and nutrition. I remember working with Cynthia, a 72-year-old yoga instructor who relied on bananas as a morning energy booster before her sessions. She stored them in the fridge to keep them fresh longer, but she often complained about digestive discomfort and inconsistent blood sugar spikes after eating them. The culprit: cold-stored unripe bananas high in resistant starch that hadn't yet converted into simpler sugars. Once we adjusted her storage method, allowing her bananas to ripen naturally on the counter, her gut symptoms eased and her energy remained more stable throughout the day. There's also a neuroscience dimension to this. Bananas, when properly ripened, are rich in dopamine precursors like L-tyrosine, along with vitamin B6, which plays a key role in mood regulation. Eating a ripe banana can, quite literally, brighten your outlook. But if ripening is interrupted, so is the bioavailability of those mood-boosting compounds. So, what's the best way to store bananas for optimal health and flavor? Keep them at room temperature, away from direct sunlight, allowing them to ripen gradually. Hanging them on a banana hook or placing them in a well-ventilated bowl works perfectly. To slow down ripening, separate bananas from ethylene-producing fruits like apples or pears. On the other hand, if you need to accelerate ripening, Put them in a paper bag with an apple, and nature will do the rest. Now what if the bananas are all ready to ripe? Don't toss them. Peel them, slice if needed, and freeze. Frozen bananas make an excellent base for smoothies, dairy-free ice cream, or even baking. Freezing locks in their natural sweetness and maintains their nutrients, provided you use them within a few weeks. Now let's move forward, because the next item we'll explore is often stored near dairy or fruit in the fridge. Yet it was never meant to be kept cold. In fact, doing so might ruin its unique biological structure and healing compounds. In your quest for a healthier kitchen, small adjustments like this create a ripple effect: better digestion, steadier mood, and deeper satisfaction with what you eat. Food is more than fuel. It's chemistry, connection, and care. Let's keep optimizing, one shelf at a time. After unpacking the chilling truth about bananas, let's move to another fruit often misunderstood when it comes to melons. Whether it's watermelon, cantaloupe, or honeydew, melons offer a refreshing burst of sweetness that instantly evokes summer picnics, hydration, and comfort. But what many people don't realize is that how you store your melon can dramatically affect not just its taste, but its nutritional power as well. Here's the mistake I see most frequently in homes and even grocery stores: putting whole uncut melons into the refrigerator before they're fully ripe. At first glance, this seems logical. Cold means preservation, right? But when it comes to melons, refrigeration too soon halts the natural ripening process, a biochemical chain reaction that continues even after the fruit has been harvested. Once inside the refrigerator, the melon's enzymatic activity slows dramatically. What should have been a juicy, aromatic fruit with vibrant sweetness becomes watery, bland, and rubbery. In the case of watermelon, that signature crisp bite can degrade into a mealy texture, stripping away one of its most appealing qualities. But the concern goes deeper than flavor or mouthfeel. A 2017 study published in the Journal of Agricultural and Food Chemistry confirmed that the levels of antioxidants like lycopene and beta-carotene continue to increase in melons as they ripen at room temperature. When that process is interrupted by early refrigeration, you're not just losing sweetness, you're losing immune-boosting, anti-inflammatory nutrients that your body depends on for cellular repair, skin health, and even protection against oxidative stress. I remember a story from one of my clients, Richard, a 66 diabetic who had started incorporating melon into his diet as a natural way to hydrate and reduce sugar cravings. But he was storing his whole cantaloupe straight from the store into the fridge. The result? He often complained the melon tasted flat and noticed no improvement in satiety or energy. Once we changed his routine, letting melons ripen on the counter and only refrigerating them after they were fully ripe or sliced, he found not only better taste, but a gentler rise in blood sugar and more sustained post-meal energy. So what's the best approach? Leave whole melons at room temperature, preferably on a kitchen counter or a dry, shaded area, until they yield slightly to pressure and give off a mild, fruity aroma. Only after they've ripened should you transfer them to the fridge, which can then extend their shelf life for a few days. Once cut, store melon pieces tightly wrapped or in a sealed glass container to avoid moisture loss and bacterial contamination. A dash of lemon juice can also help preserve freshness, especially for cantaloupe. Now let's move forward, because the next item on our list is something most people always store cold, yet science suggests doing so could degrade both its taste and natural healing properties. By respecting the natural rhythm of how food matures and interacts with temperature, we not only unlock better flavors, we protect our microbiome, our immunity, and even our emotional relationship with food. This is what modern health means: intentional choices, rooted in both science and self-care. Let's continue creating a kitchen that heals, energizes, and delights, one smart decision at a time. After exploring how refrigeration can dull the flavor and nutrition of melons, let's move on to a household favorite that most people consume daily but often store incorrectly: bread. Bread, in all its forms, from crusty artisan loaves to soft sandwich slices, is more than just a staple. It carries emotional weight. It reminds us of warmth, care, and tradition. Yet, as a health professional who spent years studying food science and human digestion, I often find that how people store their bread directly impacts not only its freshness, but their gut comfort and mealtime satisfaction. Here's the mistake: putting bread in the refrigerator thinking it will stay fresh longer. It feels logical, especially in warm climates. But this simple act sets off a chemical process known as starch retrogradation, where starch molecules in the bread begin to crystallize and harden much faster in cold environments. As a result, refrigerated bread becomes dry, crumbly, and stale, often within just a day or two. The crust loses its crispness, the inside turns rubbery, and the once inviting aroma fades away. What's worse is that this change is not reversed by reheating, unlike with frozen bread. This means your sandwich may look the same, but it doesn't nourish or satisfy in quite the same way. I recall working with Graham, a 61-year-old writer who found that his morning toast no longer gave him the same energy or digestive ease as it once did. He was using high-quality sourdough, yet still felt bloated and sluggish afterward. Upon investigating, we discovered he had been refrigerating his bread to keep it fresh. Once he switched to storing it properly or freezing and toasting as needed, his digestion improved and his energy steadied throughout the morning. There's also a psychological angle to this. Bread, when fresh, engages multiple senses: smell, touch, taste, and that sensory satisfaction sends calming signals to the brain. But when bread feels stale or flavorless, it can leave you feeling less fulfilled, even after eating the same calories. That sense of nourishment is as much emotional as it is physical. So what's the best way to preserve bread the right way? If you plan to consume your loaf within a few days, keep it at room temperature in a dry, cool spot. A bread box, loosely sealed paper bag, or cloth bag allows airflow while preventing it from drying out too quickly. Avoid plastic unless the climate is extremely dry, otherwise you'll invite mold. But if you don't plan to eat the whole loaf soon, your best bet is freezing. Slice the bread first, freeze it in portions, and toast what you need when ready. This locks in moisture and flavor while preventing premature spoilage. And when you warm it up in a toaster or oven, you're rewarded with nearly bakery-level freshness. Now let's move forward, because next we'll talk about a natural sweetener that many people refrigerate without realizing that doing so ruins its texture and may even reduce its medicinal value. Food, when stored right, doesn't just last longer, it nourishes more deeply. And in every slice, scoop, or sip, your choices in the kitchen shape how your body feels, how your mind focuses, and how fully you enjoy life. Let's continue unlocking those simple science-backed habits. Following our discussion about bread and the quiet science behind its staling process, let's turn to something far older, far sweeter, and surprisingly misunderstood when it comes to storage. Honey. Honey has been revered for centuries, only as a natural sweetener, but also as a medicinal powerhouse. Ancient Egyptians used it for wound healing, and modern studies continue to confirm its antibacterial, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory properties. From soothing sore throats to sweetening herbal teas, honey is a staple in both wellness traditions and daily cooking. And yet, one of the most common mistakes I see is storing honey in the refrigerator. The logic seems innocent: cold preserves freshness. But honey doesn't spoil the way many foods do. It's actually one of the few natural substances that's virtually shelf-stable for decades. What the cold does do, however, is trigger an entirely different reaction: crystallization. When exposed to refrigeration temperatures, honey's natural sugars, primarily glucose, begin to bind into crystals. The once smooth golden syrup turns grainy, thick, and sometimes fully solidified. While crystallized honey is still perfectly safe to eat, it becomes frustrating to use, especially if you're trying to drizzle it onto toast or stir it into warm tea. But texture isn't the only issue. Condensation is another hidden threat. When jars of honey are repeatedly moved between cold and warm environments, like from the fridge to a kitchen counter, moisture can accumulate inside the jar. This added water content opens the door to fermentation, a process that may change the honey's taste, reduce its antioxidant content, and in some cases, damage its delicate enzymes. One of my clients, Angela, age 58, swore by honey for managing her seasonal allergies, but she kept her jar in the fridge, believing it would last longer. Over time, she noticed her honey had become gritty and less aromatic. More importantly, her typical throat-soothing effect seemed reduced. Once she switched to room temperature storage in a sealed glass jar, she regained not just the ideal texture but the noticeable therapeutic benefits too. From a nutritional science perspective, raw honey contains glucose oxidase, an enzyme that produces hydrogen peroxide, a mild antimicrobial agent. When diluted in the body, this enzyme can become less effective if honey is repeatedly exposed to cold and condensation, or if it's reheated improperly after crystallizing. So what's the best practice? Keep honey at room temperature, ideally between a -75°F, P-24°C, away from direct sunlight and heat sources. Store it in an airtight container, preferably glass, to prevent moisture from entering. If your honey crystallizes, don't microwave it. Instead, place the sealed jar in a bowl of warm, not boiling water and stir gently until it regains its smooth consistency. Now let's move forward, because while honey can tolerate time, temperature changes still matter, and our next food is even more vulnerable to the cold. It's often placed in the fridge out of habit, but doing so may reduce not just flavor but its subtle healing oils. In optimizing how we store what we consume daily, we do more than preserve taste. We protect our microbiome, energy, and emotional connection to nourishment. The way we care for our food, in many ways, reflects how we care for ourselves. Let's keep building that awareness, one small change at a time. Following our look into honey and its temperature sensitivities, let's move toward something equally ancient and revered: olive oil, often referred to as liquid gold. More than just a cooking staple, extra virgin olive oil, EVU, carries centuries of tradition, health benefits, and culinary elegance. Rich in monounsaturated fats, polyphenols, and anti-inflammatory compounds, it's a foundational ingredient in the Mediterranean diet, known for supporting heart health, brain function, and even skin integrity. But despite its popularity, there's a recurring storage mistake I see even among health-conscious cooks: storing olive oil in the refrigerator. The intention is usually good: preserve freshness, prevents spoilage, but in this case, refrigeration does more harm than good. Cold temperatures cause olive oil to solidify and turn cloudy, especially if it's high quality and unrefined. While this doesn't spoil the oil, it makes pouring difficult and may confuse users into thinking it has gone bad. But beyond inconvenience, the real issue lies in temperature fluctuation. Moving olive oil in and out of the fridge exposes it to repeated changes in temperature, which accelerates oxidation, the very process that degrades its antioxidant content, flavor complexity, and nutritional potency. I remember a patient named Thomas, a 63-year-old retired chef who prided himself on using the best cold-pressed olive oils, yet he stored his opened bottle in the refrigerator to preserve its integrity. Over time, he noticed the oil's vibrant flavor flattened and his vinaigrettes tasted dull. Once we reviewed his kitchen habits and he started storing the oil properly sealed tightly in a dark glass bottle in a cool cabinet, he not only restored the flavor but also reported better digestion and reduced bloating, which can sometimes be aggravated by mildly oxidized fats. Science backs this too. According to studies from the International Olive Council, olive oil is most stable when kept between 57 degrees Fahrenheit to 70 degrees Fahrenheit, a minus 21 degrees Celsius, and protected from light, air, and heat. Refrigeration, while cool, fails to address two major enemies, light and oxygen, both of which significantly contribute to rancidity. So how should you store your olive oil for both health and culinary benefit? Keep it in a dark glass bottle or stainless steel container, tightly sealed, and placed in a cool, dry pantry or kitchen cupboard away from the stove, sunlight, or heat-generating appliances. If your kitchen tends to get warm, consider buying smaller bottles to reduce exposure time. And once opened, try to use it within 2 to 3 months for peak flavor and nutritional quality. If you find that your olive oil becomes cloudy in storage, especially during colder months, don't worry. This is not a sign of spoilage, but rather a natural reaction to lower temperatures. Simply bring it back to room temperature, and it will return to its smooth, golden state without compromising quality. Now let's move forward, because while olive oil needs to be kept cool but not cold, our next ingredient is something many people think needs refrigeration, but science says otherwise, and mismanaging its storage might be silently interfering with your morning energy, focus, and gut balance. Remember, when we protect the integrity of ingredients like olive oil, we're not just preserving flavor, we're preserving the bioactive compounds that heal, energize, and support healthy aging. In every small, intentional decision, your kitchen becomes a more powerful tool for well-being. Let's keep going. Your pantry is becoming smarter, healthier, and more aligned with the science of longevity. As we've seen throughout this journey, something as seemingly small as where and how we store our everyday foods can quietly shape our health, our meals, and even our enjoyment of life. It's easy to overlook because most of us were never taught that refrigerating an avocado too soon or keeping honey in a cold drawer might be affecting more than just flavor. But now, you know better. Whether it's letting bananas ripen on the counter, keeping garlic well ventilated, or giving olive oil the dark, quiet space it deserves, these subtle adjustments help preserve nutrients, protect natural enzymes, and reduce unnecessary food waste. And over time, they become habits that align your kitchen with how your body truly thrives. So the next time you're about to stash something in the fridge, take just a moment to pause. Ask yourself, is this where this food will stay at its best? Because those extra few seconds of awareness can ripple into better meals, better digestion, and greater harmony with the food you've chosen. These lessons aren't just about freshness or flavor. They're about being present with the everyday decisions that nourish us, choosing intention over habit, quality over convenience. And they remind us that living well doesn't always require dramatic change, just consistent care, applied thoughtfully. Now I'd love to hear from you. What's one thing you learned today that surprised you, or one simple tip you're excited to try in your own kitchen? Let's learn from each other. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, feel free to tap the like button or subscribe if you haven't already. And if you'd like to be gently reminded when the next wellness tip drops, go ahead and turn on notifications. No pressure, just an open invitation. Thank you for spending this time with me. Until next time, may your meals be vibrant, your choices intentional, and your kitchen a space that supports your fullest, healthiest life.